The first time Marcus Blackwood saw the tear in reality, he was waist-deep in the ruins of an ancient temple in Peru. As an archaeological physicist specializing in analyzing the quantum signatures of historical sites, he had grown accustomed to strange readings. But nothing had prepared him for the moment when space itself began to ripple like disturbed water. "Fascinating energy pattern you're emanating," a deep voice echoed from the distortion. "Though I must say, your measurement methods are rather primitive." Marcus adjusted his quantum scanner, more intrigued than frightened. At 40, he had spent too many years studying the inexplicable to be easily rattled. His dark hair, streaked with premature gray, fell across his face as he leaned forward to capture better readings. "Most humans run when we first appear," the voice continued, now accompanied by a shimmer of iridescent light that seemed to bend the ancient stone walls around it. "Your curiosity marks you as different." The air folded inward, creating impossible geometric patterns, and from this mathematical chaos emerged a being that defied comprehension. It was masculine in form but stood impossibly tall, nearly 30 feet in height, yet somehow existed within the confines of the 15-foot temple chamber. Its form was translucent, showing swirling patterns that resembled star systems in motion. "I am Chiron," the being announced, its voice resonating at frequencies that made Marcus's equipment spark and smoke. "I represent the Stellari, a species that exists in quantum superposition across multiple dimensions." Marcus found himself analyzing the being's physical paradox. "You're manipulating local spacetime to maintain that size while conforming to the chamber's dimensions." "Fascinating. Are you actually this tall, or is this just how my brain is interpreting your multidimensional existence?" A sound like crystalline wind chimes filled the chamber, Chiron's laughter. "Your insight is remarkable. We exist simultaneously across multiple dimensional planes. What you see is your mind's best attempt to reconcile our true form with your limited three-dimensional perception." "Why are you here?" Marcus asked, already documenting the encounter in his backup tablet. "I assume this isn't a casual visit to an Earth archaeological site. We've been observing you, Marcus Blackwood. Your research into the quantum resonance patterns of ancient structures has brought you dangerously close to discovering something your species isn't ready to know, that your ancestors built these sites as dimensional anchors, working with beings like us." Marcus's hands stilled on his tablet. "The consistent quantum signatures I've been detecting at megalithic sites worldwide, they're not natural formations? They're marriage bonds," Chiron stated matter-of-factly. "Quantum entanglements between our species and yours, creating stable points between dimensions. These unions prevented reality from tearing itself apart as consciousness evolved across multiple planes of existence." "Marriage bonds?" Marcus couldn't help but laugh. "Are you saying ancient humans married beings like you?" "In a manner of speaking." Chiron's form shifted, displaying complex mathematical equations within his translucent skin. "These unions were more scientific than romantic, a merging of quantum consciousness to maintain dimensional stability. But now the ancient bonds are failing. Reality itself is beginning to unravel." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "The increasing anomalies in my readings across different sites, that's because these quantum bonds are breaking down?" "Correct. And that is why I am here." Chiron's form crystallized into something more defined, though no less impossible. "We need to create new bonds. You have been chosen as a potential quantum partner." Marcus's scientific mind raced with questions. "Why me specifically?" "Your quantum resonance pattern is remarkably similar to the ancient humans who successfully bonded with our kind. Your understanding of quantum archaeology makes you uniquely suited to comprehend what we propose. And," Chiron's form flickered with what might have been amusement, "you are one of the few humans whose first instinct upon seeing us was to take measurements rather than flee in terror." The ancient temple chamber filled with holographic displays showing complex mathematical models. Marcus recognized some of the basic principles from his research, but the complexity was far beyond current human understanding. The process would alter your quantum signature, Chiron explained. You would retain your human form but gain the ability to exist partially in our dimensional state. It would be uncomfortable at first. Your consciousness would need to adapt to perceiving multiple realities simultaneously. And if I refuse? Then we seek another candidate. But time grows short. The dimensional barriers are weakening. Without new quantum bonds to stabilize them, both our realities face catastrophic collapse within a single human generation. Marcus studied the holographic equations surrounding him, his mind already working through the implications. I want something in return, he said finally. Name your price. Knowledge. Complete access to your understanding of quantum physics and dimensional mechanics. And protection for Earth. I want guarantees that this knowledge won't be used to harm my world. Chiron's form pulsed with approval. Acceptable terms. Though I should warn you, understanding our science may be more challenging than you anticipate. Human minds were not designed to comprehend quantum mechanics on our scale. I've spent my life studying the impossible, Marcus replied with a slight smile. I'm ready for the challenge. Then we begin. Chiron's form began to fade, the mathematical displays dissolving into sparkles of light. In 3 days, return to this chamber. The quantum alignment will be optimal then. And Marcus? The being's voice echoed as it disappeared. Bring better measurement equipment. You'll want to document everything. As reality stabilized around him, Marcus sat among the ancient stones, his mind racing with possibilities. He had come to Peru seeking evidence of advanced ancient knowledge. Instead, he had found himself engaged in a quantum partnership with a being from another dimension. Well, he muttered, checking his damaged equipment, at least my research just got a lot more interesting. He began packing up his gear, already making mental notes about what instruments he would need for proper documentation of this quantum phenomenon. As he worked, he couldn't help but wonder what his colleagues in the archaeological community would make of his upcoming paper on interdimensional partnerships in ancient cultures. The sun was setting as he emerged from the temple, casting long shadows across the ancient stones. Somewhere in the quantum foam of reality, his future waited, a future that would unite not just two beings, but two dimensions. As a scientist, he should have been terrified. Instead, he felt only excitement at the prospect of uncovering knowledge that would revolutionize human understanding of the universe. After all, he thought with a smile, how many archaeologists got to personally recreate the ancient practices they studied? 3 days passed like quantum particles, simultaneously too fast and too slow. Marcus had spent every waking moment preparing, surrounding himself with the most sensitive quantum measurement equipment he could gather. The ancient temple chamber now looked more like a physics lab than an archaeological site. As twilight approached, the air began to crystallize. Marcus activated his instruments, determined to document every aspect of what was about to happen. The quantum readings immediately spiked off his charts. Your dedication to measurement is admirable, Chiron's voice echoed through the chamber as reality began to fold. Though I should warn you, most of your equipment will cease functioning once the quantum transformation begins. The 30-foot figure materialized, but this time Marcus noticed subtle differences. Chiron's translucent form contained what appeared to be entire galaxies in motion, and the mathematical equations flowing across his skin were even more complex than before. Are you ready to begin your ascension? Chiron asked, extending a hand that seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously. Almost. Marcus checked his backup systems one final time. What exactly should I expect? The physical transformation, I mean. Physical is an inadequate term for what you're about to experience. Chiron's form shifted, creating a three-dimensional display of what appeared to be human DNA, but with impossible modifications. Your quantum signature will be altered at the subatomic level. Your consciousness will need to adapt to perceiving multiple dimensional states simultaneously. It will be intense. Marcus took a deep breath, centering himself. Will it hurt? Pain is a three-dimensional concept. What you're about to experience transcends traditional sensory input. Imagine trying to explain color to a being that perceives only radio waves. Before Marcus could respond, the air around him began to vibrate at impossible frequencies. His equipment sparked and died as reality itself seemed to twist. He felt his consciousness expanding, as if his mind was being stretched across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The sensation was beyond anything human language could describe. He was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, existing in a quantum superposition that his brain struggled to process. He saw the universe from angles that shouldn't exist, perceived time as a physical dimension he could potentially walk through. Breathe, Chiron's voice guided him through the chaos. Your consciousness is adapting to quantum perception. Don't try to make sense of everything at once. Let your mind expand naturally. Marcus felt his body changing at the quantum level. Each atom of his being was learning to exist in multiple states simultaneously. He could feel the quantum entanglement beginning, his consciousness interweaving with Chiron's across dimensional barriers. The process is accelerating, Chiron observed. Your quantum adaptation rate exceeds our projections. Most humans require several cycles to achieve basic dimensional perception. Through the kaleidoscope of quantum reality, Marcus began to understand what he was becoming. His consciousness was expanding beyond three-dimensional limitations, learning to perceive and exist in multiple states simultaneously. He could see the quantum bonds that held reality together, the delicate threads of probability that connected different dimensions. Remarkable, Chiron's voice carried notes of genuine surprise. You're not just adapting to quantum perception, you're actively engaging with it. Look at how your consciousness is already manipulating local spacetime. Marcus became aware that he was indeed affecting the reality around him. The temple chamber seemed to pulse with quantum energy, responding to his newfound awareness. He could see the ancient quantum bonds that had once stabilized this site, understanding now why his previous research had detected unusual energy patterns. Try to manifest your quantum form, Chiron instructed. Don't think about size or dimension, those concepts are irrelevant now. Focus on existing in multiple states simultaneously. Marcus felt his consciousness expand further. His physical form began to shift, growing and shrinking simultaneously as he learned to exist in quantum superposition. The sensation was dizzying but exhilarating. Excellent, Chiron praised as Marcus stabilized in a form similar to his own, though less controlled. You're learning to manipulate your quantum signature remarkably quickly. The transformation continued for what felt like both seconds and centuries. Marcus's consciousness expanded further, beginning to perceive realities beyond even Chiron's dimension. He saw possibilities branching out like fractal patterns, each decision point creating new quantum realities. Be careful, Chiron warned. Don't extend your consciousness too far too quickly. There are dimensions that even we avoid, realities that could shatter your sanity if perceived too directly. Marcus pulled back, focusing on stabilizing his quantum form. He was beginning to understand why these partnerships were necessary. The quantum bonds between dimensions weren't just maintaining stability, they were creating a network of conscious observers that prevented reality from collapsing into chaos. The primary transformation is complete, Chiron announced as Marcus's quantum signature stabilized. Though you'll continue to develop new abilities as your consciousness adapts. How do you feel? The question seemed almost absurdly simple given what he had just experienced. Marcus tried to form words, but human language felt inadequate to describe his new state of being. Instead, he projected his thoughts directly through quantum space, sharing his experience through pure consciousness. Impressive, Chiron responded, his form resonating with approval. You're already mastering quantum communication. Though you'll need to maintain your ability to communicate in traditional human methods as well. Your role as a bridge between dimensions requires you to function in both states. Marcus focused, forcing his consciousness back into a more human-compatible state. The readings, he managed to say, looking at his ruined equipment. All my measurements were recorded, Chiron assured him. Though not by your devices. We maintained quantum-level documentation of the entire process. You'll be able to access it once you've fully stabilized in your new form. As his consciousness continued to adjust, Marcus began to understand that this was only the beginning. The quantum transformation had changed him forever, opening his mind to realities he had never imagined possible. He was no longer just a human scientist studying the mysteries of the universe, he had become one of those mysteries himself. Rest now, Chiron advised as Marcus's quantum form flickered with fatigue. Your consciousness needs time to integrate these changes. Tomorrow, we'll begin your true education in quantum mechanics. There are realities waiting to be explored that your human science hasn't even begun to imagine. As Marcus allowed his form to return to its human dimensions, he realized that his life's work studying ancient quantum signatures had been leading to this moment. He had become what he had been researching, a bridge between dimensions, a quantum being capable of maintaining the delicate balance between realities. The sun was rising outside the temple, its light creating rainbow refractions through the quantum particles still dancing in the air. Marcus smiled, knowing that he now perceived those colors in ways no human ever had before. His transformation was complete, but his journey was just beginning. Marcus's first lesson in quantum mechanics from Chiron's perspective came without warning. One moment he was examining an ancient stone carving, the next he found himself existing simultaneously across 12 different dimensions. Your human mathematics has barely scratched the surface of reality, Chiron's consciousness resonated across the quantum field. Watch closely. The universe unfolded before Marcus like an infinite origami, revealing layers of existence he had never imagined. He saw how quantum particles danced between dimensions, how consciousness itself acted as a stabilizing force in the cosmic framework. The ancient bonds weren't just partnerships, Chiron explained, his form shifting through multiple quantum states. They were conscious anchor points, preventing reality from unraveling. But there's something we haven't told you about why we need new bonds now. Marcus's quantum-enhanced consciousness detected a subtle shift in Chiron's energy pattern, something akin to anxiety. What haven't you told me? We're not just fighting dimensional instability. Chiron's form expanded, showing Marcus visions of realities collapsing into chaos. We're fighting evolution itself. Consciousness across all dimensions is evolving, becoming more complex. The old quantum bonds can't handle the increased load. Through his new perceptions, Marcus began to understand. You're not just looking for stability, you're trying to create a new form of consciousness that can exist across all dimensional planes simultaneously. Yes. Chiron's approval rippled through quantum space. The unions between our species aren't just maintaining reality, they're creating something new. A hybrid consciousness that can perceive and influence all dimensions simultaneously. Marcus processed this revelation, his mind expanding to grasp its implications. Is that even possible? The energy required to maintain consciousness across infinite dimensions is precisely why we chose you. Chiron's form shifted closer, their quantum signatures beginning to resonate in harmony. Your consciousness adapted to quantum perception faster than any human we've encountered in millennia. You understand both the scientific and intuitive aspects of dimensional mechanics. The air around them crystallized as Chiron revealed more of the truth. The stellari aren't naturally 30 feet tall. We grew to this scale across dimensional planes as our consciousness expanded. Each new dimension we perceived required more quantum space to exist within. So when I see you as giant, I'm actually seeing the total quantum space our consciousness occupies across all dimensions, yes. And now, observe yourself. Marcus shifted his perception and gasped. His own form had grown, now existing at nearly the same scale as Chiron. His consciousness had been expanding without him even realizing it. The transformation is proceeding faster than we anticipated, Chiron observed. Your consciousness is naturally seeking to occupy more quantum space. But there's a risk, if you expand too quickly, without proper anchoring. Reality trembled around them as Marcus's consciousness briefly slipped its dimensional bounds. He felt himself beginning to fragment across multiple timelines, his awareness stretching dangerously thin. Focus. Chiron's consciousness enveloped him, providing a stabilizing framework. Center yourself in your primary quantum state. Don't try to perceive everything at once. Slowly, Marcus pulled himself back together, understanding now why the process required such careful guidance. The ancient humans who bonded with your kind, did they all go through this? Some did. Others. Chiron's form flickered with what might have been sadness. Not all consciousness can handle quantum expansion. Many were lost, scattered across dimensions. That's why finding compatible matches is so crucial. As his consciousness stabilized, Marcus began perceiving patterns he hadn't noticed before. The quantum signatures at the ancient sites, they're not just bonds, they're successful unions. Places where human and stellari consciousness managed to achieve stable quantum harmony. Yes. And each site marks a point where reality was successfully anchored across multiple dimensions. But now, Chiron's form shifted, revealing the deterioration of these ancient quantum bonds. The anchors are failing. Reality needs new points of stability. And that's where I come in. Marcus was beginning to understand the true scope of what he had agreed to. Our partnership won't just be about stability, it's about creating a new type of quantum consciousness that can maintain dimensional harmony naturally. Precisely. Chiron's approval resonated across quantum space. But there's more. The Stellari believe that these hybrid consciousness points are the next step in universal evolution. A way for reality itself to become self-aware across all dimensional planes. The implications were staggering. Marcus's scientific mind raced with possibilities even as his expanded consciousness grappled with the metaphysical implications. You're not just saving reality, you're trying to help it evolve. Evolution or extinction, Chiron confirmed. As consciousness expands across dimensions, reality must either adapt or collapse. Our bonds are creating the adaptation points reality needs to survive. Marcus felt his consciousness brush against the edges of understanding so vast it threatened to overwhelm him. He saw how each successful quantum bond created ripples through dimensions, stabilizing reality while simultaneously pushing it toward greater complexity. There's something else, he realized, perceiving patterns within patterns. The Stellari, you're not just seeking these bonds for stability. You're dying out, aren't you? Chiron's form pulsed with confirmation. Our species has reached the limits of our dimensional evolution. Without new quantum patterns to incorporate, our consciousness will eventually fade into entropy. These partnerships are our path to survival as well. So we need each other, Marcus mused, his consciousness interweaving more deeply with Chiron's. Humans provide new quantum patterns for consciousness, while the Stellari provide the framework for dimensional expansion. Together, we create something greater than either species could achieve alone. Chiron's form began to fade as reality reasserted its more limited dimensions. Rest now. Tomorrow, we begin the final phase of your quantum integration. As his consciousness settled back into primarily human perception, Marcus found himself again in the ancient temple chamber. But now he saw it with new understanding, not just as an archaeological site, but as a quantum waypoint marking successful bonds between dimensions. He touched the ancient stones, feeling the fading quantum signatures of those who had undergone this transformation before him. They had faced the same choice he now faced, to remain bound to one dimension, or to become something entirely new. The sun was setting outside, its light creating quantum refractions only he could now perceive. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new expansions of consciousness. But for now, he allowed himself to rest, existing simultaneously as both human scientist and emerging quantum being, a bridge between dimensions and species. In the quantum space between moments, he felt Chiron's consciousness brush against his, a reminder that he was no longer alone in his journey through the infinite layers of reality. The warning came as a quantum whisper, barely distinguishable from the background noise of reality. Marcus was practicing his dimensional transitions when he felt it, a consciousness brushing against his, different from Chiron's familiar quantum signature. The Stellari aren't telling you everything, the consciousness projected. The quantum bonds are causing more harm than stability. Marcus maintained his quantum form, careful not to alert Chiron to this contact. Identify yourself, he demanded through quantum space. A figure materialized, similar to Chiron in size but with a distinctly different energy pattern. I am Theron, leader of the quantum preservation movement. We oppose these forced evolutionary jumps between dimensions. Why are you contacting me? Because you're different. Theron's form shifted, revealing patterns of quantum decay Marcus hadn't seen before. Your consciousness adapted too quickly, too perfectly. Haven't you wondered why? Marcus had wondered. His rapid quantum integration had surprised even Chiron. Explain. The Stellari have been manipulating human genetics for generations, preparing for these bonds. But they didn't tell you the cost. Theron's form expanded, showing Marcus visions of reality torn apart at the quantum level. Each successful hybrid consciousness creates microtears in the dimensional fabric. The more consciousness expands, the faster reality deteriorates. The revelation hit Marcus like a quantum shock wave. He examined the patterns Theron showed him, applying his scientific training to analyze the data. The evidence was compelling, each quantum bond did create subtle distortions in spacetime. If what you're saying is true, why didn't the ancient bonds cause this problem? Because they were natural partnerships, occurring at reality's own evolutionary pace. Theron's form pulsed with urgency. The Stellari are forcing evolution, trying to create hybrid beings powerful enough to stabilize reality across all dimensions simultaneously. But consciousness wasn't meant to expand so rapidly. Marcus felt his own consciousness brush against the truth of these words. He had noticed strange fluctuations during his transformation but had attributed them to normal quantum instability. The Stellari are desperate, Theron continued. Our species is facing extinction, unable to maintain quantum coherence across expanding dimensional spaces. They believe creating hybrid beings will save us, but they're accelerating the very collapse they're trying to prevent. Why should I believe you over Chiron? You're a scientist. Examine the quantum patterns yourself. Look at the microtears forming around your own consciousness as it expands. Marcus shifted his perception, focusing on the quantum space he occupied. There, barely visible but undeniable, were tiny fractures in reality, spreading outward from his expanded consciousness. The Stellari believe they can control these fractures, Theron explained. They think creating enough hybrid consciousness points will stabilize reality before the damage becomes critical. But they're wrong. Each new bond increases the rate of dimensional decay exponentially. If you're right, what's the alternative? Marcus asked, his scientific mind already calculating possibilities. Reality is already showing signs of instability. Natural evolution. Theron's form shifted, showing visions of a different future. Let consciousness expand at its own pace. The ancient bonds worked because they formed naturally, over thousands of years. These forced quantum marriages are like trying to make a star go supernova to harvest its energy. It might work briefly, but the aftermath will destroy everything. Before Marcus could respond, he felt Chiron's consciousness approaching through quantum space. Theron's form began to fade. Think about what I've shown you, Theron projected quickly. Your consciousness is uniquely adapted to perceive quantum truth. Look beyond what the Stellari want you to see. Chiron materialized as Theron's presence vanished completely. Your quantum signature showed disturbance, he said. Is everything all right? Marcus carefully controlled his quantum state, masking his turbulent thoughts. Just practicing dimensional transitions. It's more challenging than expected. Your progress is remarkable, Chiron assured him, but Marcus now detected something new in his quantum pattern: anxiety, perhaps even fear. As they began the day's training, Marcus found himself analyzing every quantum interaction with new awareness. He saw what Theron meant about forced evolution. His own consciousness was expanding faster than the surrounding quantum space could adapt. Focus, Chiron instructed as Marcus's form wavered between dimensions. You're letting your consciousness scatter. The quantum tears, Marcus said suddenly. Why didn't you tell me about them? Chiron's form stilled completely, a telling reaction in quantum space where everything was usually in constant motion. You've been contacted. Answer the question. The tears are temporary, Chiron insisted. Once enough hybrid consciousness points are established, reality will stabilize at a new quantum level. Or it will shatter completely. Marcus expanded his consciousness, forcing Chiron to see the spreading fractures. These aren't just growing pains, are they? They're signs of quantum stress failure. We have no choice, Chiron's form pulsed with emotion. Our species is dying. Without these bonds, we face extinction. Yes, there are risks, but the alternative is letting evolution take its natural course. Marcus felt his consciousness brush against deeper truths. The ancient bonds worked because they formed naturally. We're trying to force something that should take millennia to develop. The quantum space between them crackled with tension. Marcus felt other consciousnesses gathering at the edges of his perception, more Stellari, drawn by their confrontation. You have to make a choice, Chiron said finally. Complete the bond or remain as you are. But know that without these partnerships, reality will continue to deteriorate. Unless that deterioration is being caused by the bonds themselves. Marcus maintained his quantum form but began drawing his consciousness back, consolidating it into a more stable pattern. I need time to study this properly. As a scientist, not just a quantum partner. Time is the one thing we don't have. Chiron's form began to fade. Think carefully about your choice, Marcus. The fate of multiple realities may depend on it. Left alone in quantum space, Marcus examined the patterns around him. The tears were small but multiplying, each one a potential point of catastrophic failure in the fabric of reality. He had to find the truth, not just for himself, but for all consciousness across all dimensions. The sun was setting outside the temple, its light creating new patterns as it passed through the quantum distortions only he could now see. Tomorrow he would have to make his choice. Continue with the quantum bonding and hope the Stellari were right, or trust his scientific instincts and search for another way. In the space between moments, he felt Theron's consciousness brush against his once more, a reminder that even in quantum space, truth was rarely simple and choices were never easy. The ancient temple hummed with quantum energy as reality itself held its breath. Marcus stood at the center of converging dimensional planes, his consciousness expanded to its fullest extent. Around him, the air shimmered with the presence of both Stellari factions, Chiron's group seeking to force evolution forward, and Theron's preservationists arguing for natural development. I've made my decision, Marcus projected across quantum space. But first, I want to show you something. His consciousness expanded, drawing on everything he had learned about quantum mechanics from both sides. The temple chamber filled with complex mathematical patterns as he demonstrated his discovery. Look at the quantum signature of the temple itself, he directed. Not just at our level of perception, but across all dimensional planes simultaneously. The assembled beings shifted their perception, following his guidance. The temple's quantum pattern became visible, not just as an ancient structure, but as a living mathematical equation written in reality itself. The ancients weren't just creating bonds, Marcus explained, his consciousness tracing the intricate patterns. They were writing instructions into the fabric of space-time. I've decoded them. Chiron's form pulsed with surprise. What instructions? A way to achieve what both sides want, quantum evolution without dimensional collapse. Marcus's consciousness expanded further, revealing more of the pattern. The bonds weren't meant to be permanent. They were temporary bridges, allowing consciousness to naturally adapt to quantum expansion. Theron's presence shifted closer. Explain. The ancient humans and Stellari created quantum scaffolding, temporary structures that supported consciousness as it learned to exist across multiple dimensions. Once the consciousness adapted, the bonds naturally dissolved, leaving behind stable, independently evolved beings. The quantum space filled with ripples of realization as both factions processed this revelation. Marcus continued, his scientific training helping him explain the complex concept. We've been thinking about quantum bonds like permanent bridges, when they were meant to be more like training wheels. The problem isn't creating or avoiding the bonds, it's learning how to dissolve them properly. Marcus demonstrated by carefully unwinding some of his own quantum expansion, showing how consciousness could be gradually stretched across dimensions without causing tears in reality. The tears we're seeing aren't from consciousness expanding too fast, he explained. They're from consciousness remaining artificially expanded through permanent bonds. Reality is trying to heal itself, but the bonds are holding the tears open. What are you proposing? Chiron asked, his form flickering with both hope and anxiety. A new kind of quantum partnership. Marcus's consciousness brushed against both factions simultaneously. Not a permanent bond, but a guided evolution. The Stellari can share their quantum knowledge while humans share their adaptive capabilities. Each species helps the other evolve naturally. He demonstrated by shifting his consciousness through multiple quantum states, showing how he had learned to maintain dimensional awareness without requiring a permanent bond. The ancient sites aren't failing, they're completing their purpose. The bonds were meant to dissolve once consciousness learned to maintain quantum stability independently. The quantum space hummed with the impact of this revelation. Marcus felt the two factions' consciousness patterns beginning to align as they understood the truth. Instead of forcing evolution through permanent bonds, he continued, we create temporary quantum partnerships. Each species helps the other develop natural quantum awareness. The bonds dissolve naturally as consciousness adapts, preventing dimensional tears while allowing for genuine evolution. Theron's form pulsed with approval. The preservation of natural quantum development. While still achieving the expanded consciousness the Stellari need, Chiron completed the thought. Marcus brought his consciousness to its full quantum expression, demonstrating the pattern he had discovered. I offer myself not as a permanent partner, but as a quantum guide. Let me help both species understand how to achieve controlled evolutionary expansion without risking dimensional collapse. The temple chamber filled with swirling quantum equations as Marcus demonstrated his solution. He showed how consciousness could be gradually expanded across dimensional planes, creating temporary bonds that would naturally dissolve as evolution occurred. The ancient humans and Stellari left us the blueprint, he explained. They weren't trying to create permanent hybrid beings. They were showing us how to guide natural quantum evolution. The air crystallized as both factions came to a decision. Chiron's form shifted closer, his consciousness resonating with new understanding. You found a third path, he acknowledged. One that serves both preservation and progress. The quantum bond protocol wasn't about marriage at all, Marcus concluded. It was about teaching consciousness how to dance through dimensions without losing its way. As the sun rose outside the temple, reality itself seemed to sigh with relief. The quantum tears began to heal as the assembled beings accepted this new understanding. Marcus felt his consciousness settle into its new state, not permanently bonded, but naturally expanded through understanding. So, He projected across quantum space, "Shall we begin the real work of teaching consciousness how to evolve?" The temple filled with harmonious quantum resonance as both factions aligned their consciousness with his proposal. The ancient stones hummed with renewed purpose, ready to serve once again as a classroom for dimensional evolution. In the space between moments, Marcus smiled, knowing he had found something far more valuable than a quantum partnership. He had discovered the true purpose of consciousness itself, not to force its way across dimensions, but to learn to dance between them naturally. The Quantum Bride protocol was complete, but the real journey was just beginning. Across dimensions, consciousness prepared to learn its true nature, guided by the ancient wisdom finally understood through modern quantum science. Reality itself seemed to sparkle with possibility as the first light of dawn created rainbow refractions through the quantum field. The future was no longer about bonds and bridges, it was about teaching consciousness how to fly.